It was Ali and Frazier, it was X-Men and Teen Titans, and they were just boom, you know, who could do more angst, and who had cooler powers and who had cooler villains.
Nice going, Wonder Doll!
Am I glad these Amazon bracelets are invulnerable!
For some reason, I was drawn to the Titans over the X-Men. I liked them a little better, because it was like a huge soap opera wonderfulness.
Sometimes you have superhero characters that are supposed to be teens, but they don't act like teens. The Teen Titans, you know, they make mistakes and mess up, and like they do things that we all do as teens.
They're not Justice League for a reason.
That ring can manifest any weapon imaginable, and you choose the Golden Girls?
These sassy old broads are the toughest ladies around.
You'd make such a great member of the Justice League.
They're the oldest teenagers in comics, and the Teen Titans have evolved a great deal over the past 55 years. They've gotten older, meaner, and cooler than anyone ever thought they would be. From comics' top-selling book of the early 1980s to hit animated and live-action TV series, the Titans franchise is a blockbuster. Let's go behind the panel with the Teen Titans. In 1964's Brave and the Bold issue 54, three of DC's most popular sidekicks, Aqualad, Kid Flash, and Robin the Boy Wonder, struck out on their own in a story by writer Bob Haney and artist Bruno Premiani. A year later, Wonder Girl joined them, and the Teen Titans were born. Those early Silver Age Titan stories were a bit silly. Almost every grown-up is grouchy and out of touch, even Batman and Flash, and the forced teen slang is painful to read now. But the series still broke new ground for DC Comics. It referenced music acts like the Beatles, and the team took on real-life hot-button topics like racial tensions and Vietnam War protests. Speedy, Green Arrow's future drug-using sidekick, would join in issue 19, while Lilith Clay and Mal Duncan would also become members. The Silver Age Titans were also blessed with the incredible artwork of the great Nick Cardy. He penciled or inked every single issue in the initial Titans series, and his rendition of the team was the benchmark for years. But as comics tastes changed in the 1970s, the Titans fell out of favor and were canceled after issue 43. They were out of commission for 3 years until a brief, unsuccessful revival in the late 70s. The Teen Titans were almost dead until writer Marv Wolfman had an idea.
I was trying to come up with a book to work on for DC. I had been at Marvel for a number of years, and I've come back and I was looking for a new title, and I always loved the Teen Titans, but I wanted to do a very different version of it. I wanted to do a much more adult version. It sounds weird, but that's the way it is.
Enter George Perez, then a budding superstar at Marvel with a gift and passion for drawing superhero teams. Perez wasn't exactly sold on the long-term prospects of a Titans comic book.
I didn't expect the book to last 6 issues. I was asked by Marv Wolfman. At that point, I wanted to do the Justice League because that was DC's version of Marvel's Avengers. I got to draw all these different characters that I grew up with. I said, well, if you guarantee me or at least promise me a one-issue shot at the Justice League, I'll start this Teen Titans book.
So we had Robin, who was Batman's partner, and Wonder Girl, who was related to Wonder Woman in bizarre ways. Those were the two DC characters that we used for the most part. All the others we decided to create. Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg were all new creations that George Perez and I did. George was the artist and then co-plotter later, and I was the writer.
Come on, Marv. Don't do Wally West like that and not even say his name. Kid Flash and Beast Boy were two other Titans revamped for the new series. And here was the secret sauce that made the new Teen Titans so special. Wolfman and Perez created characters with faults, insecurities, and personal demons. Raven is literally the daughter of a demon, Trigon the Terrible. Robin, even later on as Nightwing, was always trying to measure up to Batman. Donna Troy was an orphan, or at least she was before her origin story was retconned after Crisis on Infinite Earths. Vic Stone was turned into Cyborg by his father to save his life. Starfire was an alien princess sold into slavery by her dad. Even Kid Flash and Beast Boy were more than just a comic relief. Wolfman, Perez, and editor Len Wein convinced DC to give the Titans another try. A 16-page tryout in DC Comics Presents issue 26 was the appetizer. A month later came the main course, the first issue of the new Teen Titans, and it was a hit.
Well, the first issue sold through the roof unbelievably. Second issue sold a little less, which is always the case. Third, fourth, and fifth even less. What you have to remember was this is before the direct market to some degree. The direct market was just beginning, so most sales, which were coming from the newsstand, you don't get those for 6 to 9 months. There's a natural lowering the print order. That happened with every book. But with issue 6, it suddenly zoomed up because by that point, we had the sales figures of #1 and we saw that it was a hit. And then it never stopped going up from that point on.
Its success surprised me. By the time I was working on the 8th issue, that's when I knew it was a special book. The Day in the Lives, we deal more with the characters as people as opposed to superheroes. And I realized how deeply involved I was now getting. Thanks to also the generosity of Marv Wolfman, that even though he had conceptualized most of the characters already, he believes in a partnership among with writer and artist. So he had me suggest things, put things in.
The combination of Wolfman, a writer who admitted that he hated team comics, with Perez, an artist who absolutely loved super teams, was pure magic. The two became friends as well as collaborators, and their recipe for success was to make the infighting and personal drama as important as the villain du jour.
What I wanted to do was create characters that were a family. And to me, the X-Men were not a family. They were like the Justice League, or they were like the Avengers, characters who just come together to fight whatever the problem is of the time. And that's not what I wanted. I've always said, we're not DC's X-Men, we're DC's Fantastic Four, only we had 7 characters.
The New Teen Titans quickly became DC's biggest selling book, thanks to storylines like Who is Donna Troy and the Judas Contract. That last one involves one of the most important people in the Titans universe, Deathstroke. Introduced in the 2nd issue of the new series as Deathstroke the Terminator, Slade Wilson made an instant impact. He looked cool as hell thanks to Perez's instantly iconic costume design, and he also wasn't your standard comic book bad guy.
Marv came up with the idea of having an assassin whose job was to hunt down the Titans. So of course he had to be, the best at his job. And it being a 1980s comic, of course I dressed him up like a superhero. The only thing I did that was not expected by Marv was the half mask that really only has one eye, because then I thought, how really good an assassin he must be if he can work without depth perception.
Deathstroke, oddly enough, he's one of 2 characters that came to me literally in 1 second. And I'm not exaggerating, I'm not trying to be, funny for the cameras or whatever else. I'm walking down the street while I'm coming up with the new Titans characters as well, Starfire and Raven and Cyborg, and Deathstroke comes full blown and have no idea why. I pitched it with George. We both saw it exactly the same way. He's a mercenary. He's not a villain. I never saw the character as a villain. I saw him as a mercenary.
Again, I came up with the one eye idea, put scales on it because that was the only way to actually draw what I consider chainmail, but it looked like scales, and giving him the weaponry.
He took on jobs for hire. He would never have had a reason to fight the Teen Titans, except that his son took on a contract with a villainous group called the Hive to get rid of the Titans. And in the process of trying to do so, he died. And Deathstroke had to take up his son's mission. That's part of the contract he set up. He's suddenly thrust into this world where he has to try to kill these people that he doesn't care about. It's not what he does. And he's sinking slowly and slowly into this quagmire where he's finding he cannot escape from doing something he doesn't want to do, and he has to do it in order to fulfill the contract.
For one of the all-time great DC Comics heels, Deathstroke's first appearance outside of comic books was ultra lame. Remember Deathstroke on the 1990s series Lois and Clark, played by Antonio Sabato Jr., of all people? The character would later be redeemed on shows like Arrow and Titans, video games, and of course that Justice League post-credits tease. Oh, what could have been Joe Manganiello. Deathstroke even may have inspired a certain fourth wall cracking Marvel character. I mean, really. Deadpool, Wade Wilson, the Katana Swords. I guess that's what they mean when they say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Deadpool? Why does everybody think I'm Deadpool?
You got them guns! And the swords.
Oh, I'm not Deadpool. I am the greatest, most ultimate supervillain the world has ever seen.
I never imagined 30-something years later that mask would be iconic. I see it everywhere. I see it on T-shirts. I see it, obviously on the TV show. Some fan made me a mock-up of the first appearance of the mask in the Arrow show with the arrow through the mask on the stick. I never would have imagined it.
Remember we told you that Wolfman hated kid sidekicks? That's because he grew up reading the Batman books when Robin was always the boy hostage. The Dick Grayson stories he wanted to tell were about a young hero becoming his own man.
I had been a Batman fan, but my problem with Robin was that he was always portrayed in the Batman book as this young kid who told bad puns and was usually captured so Batman would have to save him. And I just was not interested in telling any stories like that, and George wasn't interested in any of that either. We wanted to tell stories about people. So we started to age Dick Grayson from maybe 16 to 19. And that's a massive difference in how you act, how you react to people, how you live, how you develop your life. And what I wanted to show and what George and I settled on was trying to come up with a way to show him growing up as a real person. And a lot of that is moving away from your father figure, moving away from being treated like a little kid. And we wanted to change the character almost from day one, but the costume back then, you had to keep the same costume forever. And Robin's costume was really meant for a 9-year-old. He was wearing these little green Peter Pan type shorts and all of that stuff. It looked ridiculous. He's being portrayed as a 19-year-old visually, except for a costume.
Despite my own personal feelings about the Batman TV show as I got older, oh my God, it is silly. If you look at the comics at the time, oh, they were pretty close. You know, a lot of these stories were adapted from the comics. But we don't want to admit that, yes, a teenage boy dressed in a red and yellow costume with green trunks and bare legs and elf boots, yeah, that is kind of silly looking.
The Batman editor at the time wanted to have Robin back in the Batman book. Teen Titans was outselling Batman, so I could call it if I wanted it. And I said, tell you what, I don't want Robin. I don't care about Robin. I want Dick Grayson. Let me have Dick Grayson. You create a new Robin. Nobody's done that before. You'll get a lot of publicity on it. You could really play that up. And they loved the idea because here was something that would be unique to Batman. And we were able to create the Nightwing character to honor Batman somewhat and to honor Superman somewhat.
The transformation of Dick Grayson from Robin to Nightwing was one of several huge milestones the Judas Contract delivered. It's a measure of the story's enduring popularity that has been adapted so many times in other media, from the 2003 animated series to the 2017 animated film Teen Titans: The Judas Contract, and even Young Justice has riffed on it. The original story paid off several years of story threads, from revealing Deathstroke's secret origin to Terra's betrayal of the Titans.
We knew that the character of Terra was going to be a villain from day one. We knew that she was going to die from day one. The trick was trying to convince the Titans that she was a good person and they could redeem her evil side. And in having to come up with all the explanations to convince the Titans that she was good, it actually worked on the readers. We never for a moment wavered. In fact, we swore up front we would never fall in love with this character, because you're coming up with a character, she's a young 15-year-old girl, she's cute as a bunny, she has buck teeth and all this sort of stuff, and absolutely plays to the fan interest in what those characters should be. But we knew that wasn't her. We knew that was a lie. When Terra finally confronts the Titans, what happens to Terra by the end of that story, I think the fans were just so shocked that they were fooled in a sense to believe this was a great character, this was a good character, and it turns out she was bad. They still were rooting for her even though she was bad. So it involved fans on a very emotional basis in a way they had never been before.
One very uncomfortable aspect of the Judas Contract has always been the relationship between Wilson, an apparently middle-aged man, and Terra, who's a teenager. Their romantic relationship is strongly implied, which is why DC retconned it during Rebirth, to make it less creepy. Not long after the original story, Perez would take a leave of absence from the Titans, first to draw Crisis on Infinite Earths, which his partner Wolfman wrote, and later to write and pencil the post-crisis reboot of Wonder Woman. It was a difficult move, but it was one the artist felt he had to make.
It was, but the thing is, I needed a challenge. I needed to grow as an artist, and to make sure that no one ever assumed that I was having any difficulty working with Marv. When I announced it, Marv was sitting next to me at the panel, and Marv, again, best collaborator, wonderful friend. He's the one who encouraged me to write, and he fought when they were handling royalties to make sure that I got all the same creative perks and royalties that he would get. Even though some of the characters, again, he came up with the concepts of Raven and Starfire. I gave him flesh, but he had put the spark of the soul into them first. He may have created great characters. Without me, he wouldn't have had a comic. The story is more important than either of his creators. And again, words I live by to this day.
The series eventually would run out of steam, ending with issue 130. Wolfman and Perez would reunite in 2011 to finish the new Teen Titans Games graphic novel they had begun 2 decades prior. During that time, the rosters changed, heroes changed identities, such as Speedy becoming Arsenal, and other creators took their shot with the Titans. Devin Grayson not only wrote a killer Titans miniseries, The Technus Imperative, she also is the answer to the trivia question, who co-wrote Brian K. Vaughan's only Teen Titans comic script. But no modern-day writer has had the impact on the team that Geoff Johns has had. His Titans series had several characters from the just disbanded Young Justice, another teen-centric team, move over to the Titans. Johns helped boost sales, but also sparked controversy with moves such as having Superboy join the team and making him a clone made from Superman and Lex Luthor's DNA. I know, weird, right? The New 52 relaunch drove fans nuts because it wiped previous Titans teams from existence. Thankfully, the damage would be undone with Titans Hunt and Rebirth. While the roster may change with every new creative team, there is always the allure of trying to follow in the footsteps of Wolfman and Perez. Tom King has written several Titans stories in the past, and his love for Dick Grayson shone through during his awesome run on Grayson. Guess where it all began?
I came to DC when I was like 11, 12. By that time, they were doing the Baxter reprints of the Marv Perez stuff. And then I started reading that, and then I became a back issue diver, and I read the whole thing.
The Titans characters continue to prove their versatility for any type of storytelling. Cami Garcia and Gabriel Piccolo's young adult graphic novel, Teen Titans Raven, offered a reinvention of the popular character without the superhero trappings.
I mean, for me, one of the things that attracted me to the project was the fact that I could create these origin stories for each one before I brought them together, because I think they're really relatable. You can't obviously delve into each character very much unless it's going to be 1,000 pages. So I wanted readers to be able to get really invested and not necessarily change their stories completely, but find out more about them.
For me, I think the more powerful the character is, the less I find it possible to empathize, to identify with that character. So that's why I love the Teen Titans in the way that they're sort of underdogs.
Yeah.
Garcia and Piccolo actually discovered the Titans not through the comics, but through the animated series.
My first exposure was the Teen Titans cartoon back from the 2003. I love everything about that show, because at that time I was very much into manga and anime, and I think that show used a lot of those elements. So that was my first contact with Teen Titans and DC and superheroes in general. Also because in Brazil we don't have comic book shops. The first time I went to a comic book shop was here in the US. So the animation was my gateway to it.
I think I remember them like in a crossover thing, but when I really loved them was in the animated series. And then I'd read some comics, but when I said I was gonna do the job, I said, it's out of continuity, you don't have to read any of this stuff, but I was like, whatever, I'm reading all the stuff. And I went back and read all of Marvin George's run. And then, Marv Wolfman also has like a more recent run, which was super cute and very teen.
They're not just sleek for a reason, they're still learning a lot of stuff. I think that's the magic.
Yeah, they're not perfect.
While its roster may have different faces behind familiar masks, like Damian Wayne as Robin, the Teen Titans remain one of the foundations of the DC universe. From comics to television, video games, and even movies, the Titans have stood the test of time, and we can trace it all back to two men, Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
The Titans ended up being a phenomenal success. According to some historians, it saved DC Comics, because at that point they didn't have a book that was selling anywhere close to Marvel titles. And the Titans were standing toe-to-toe with Marvel's top book, The X-Men. And it continued that way while Marv and I stayed on it, and it was a phenomenal success. I had a great time.
If it's the 5,000th appearance of Lex Luthor, nobody's going to care. If it becomes a different character that you're introducing, or you've made such significant changes to Lex, suddenly people are going to be paying attention to it. And you want fans to still love the material, but they won't if all you do is replicating what you have already done before. So that's why it was vitally important to me that we have a brand new set of characters that we could learn about, and constantly introducing all those villains, because we kept every issue or so, there'd be a brand new character that the Titans would meet.
I remember a time when they would do promotional ads for DC Comics, and I was hoping maybe one day Starfire will appear among the characters they use in their promotions, just to make it feel like she is part of the DC universe. Same thing with Cyborg and Raven. And now they have become iconic in their own right. That's a sense of immortality I never expected in my life. I said, wow, these characters are, not only are they being welcomed by a whole new audience, but their parents are being acknowledged. But thank you for bringing this person into the world.
We've all got our favorite Teen Titans lineup. What's yours? Let us know in the comments, or reach out to us on Twitter or Instagram. That's a wrap on this week's Behind the Panel. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more awesome comics-related videos. And remember, Behind the Panel isn't just a video series. We also have a weekly column at SYFYWIRE.com, as well as an amazing audio documentary series. Listen and subscribe to Behind the Panel wherever you get your podcasts.